Hi everybody, it's me, Hugh Riley, here at thatchannel.com, and this is the Digital Citizen Show, and I've got two great guys, of course, the real digital citizens of this show, Jonathan Chevreau from FindependentHub.com and Norman Evans from DigitalCitizen.com.
Wonderful to be back.
So great to have you guys here today, and we're just going to have a great conversation about money, everything to do with the human financial life cycle, which is an interesting concept, John.
Yeah, well, as I said, human beings all go through similar life journeys, right? We all start as infants, we end up in the grave, and nobody escapes that fate. In the same fashion, we all have a financial life cycle, but instead of saying it starts at zero, for the sake of argument, let's say that the human financial life cycle starts at age 18. And then it goes on and on until pretty much to the end. We all start life, the millennials are 18, for example. Right now, my daughter is 24, and they have enormous human capital, human earning potential. Probably any millennial right now is worth $3 or $4 million in. And the trick is, how do I turn that earning potential into actual financial capital?
Mm-hmm.
And the boomers are the opposite. We don't have much human potential left, and hopefully that's why they've been nagging us to save for retirement all these years, for 30 years, because you better have converted some of that potential into capacity. But of course it turns out that retirement is not really a very useful word, and that's why you were going to ask me, what is Findependent?
Yes, that's right, especially because, as you say, people actually don't want to retire anymore. They want to stay active, and they want to just keep doing what they do.
Well, Norman is a good example. I mean, I don't want to be out of school and reveal his age, but, you know, he's pretty close to do not resuscitate age.
Thank you. I would rather think of myself as a 1947 model boomer.
So anybody could do the arithmetic and figure
Correct.
it out from there, and I'm a 53 model. And I don't know, Hugh, whether you wish to reveal your actual identity.
I can't. Besides, I got these rings. I'm not allowed to discuss it.
All right, well, no problem. So financial independence is sort of the new paradigm. And so I say, let's retire the word retirement, and let's go with Findependence. And all Findependence is a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, rather than say financial independence, what's that, 5 syllables? Findependence, which is fewer syllables. In fact, that's how the book originally started.
Which is right here. Just hold it up here. Findependence Day.
Yeah,
Right.
and I was at Motley Fool the other night, and they asked what came first, like the book or the title. I said, well, in my case, the title. I was just noodling around one day. It must have been July 4th. It was American Independence Day. I go, Independence Day, and I go, financial independence. Why don't you call that Findependence Day? Hey, there's a title. So I thought, I got a title, might as well. So I registered the URL, and then wrote the book, which turned out to be a financial novel. You know, the wealthy boomer, the wealthy barber, David Chilton, is the classic example of a financial novel. Mm-hmm. Independence Day is a little bit more in that it actually does try to be a novel with setbacks and conflicts and characterization and plotting. It's essentially a couple with a 22-year journey to financial independence. And of course, to have conflict in a novel, mm-hmm. you have to have characters with different objectives. So we have, in this case, Jamie and Sheena. One is a spender and one is a saver. So you have the conflict around that, and
mm-hmm.
And one thing leads to another.
Well, and we should mention that you're not just trying to sell books here. You're actually on a mission to help everybody to become financially independent.
Well, yeah, but not to retire. I mean, Findependence is something you can aspire to in your 30s or 40s. There are a number of websites in the States, like Mr. Money Mustache and retireby30.com. And these people are fanatically frugal people. Mm-hmm. And they say that if you saved half your money from age 20, you could actually be independent. They don't use the term financially independent by your mid-30s. Now, I don't think most Canadians can save 50% of the income. And part of the financial life cycle I was talking about is marriage, kids, buying a house, mortgage, and little wonder that most ordinary people, end up working for 25 to 30, 35 years. I call it in the new book, Victory Lap Retirement, slaving and saving. So people think they want to retire, and they're so bored, they're so sick of going to the office, commuting, putting up with office politics, commuting, annual reports and performance reports. So they get so sick of the corporate grind, they think they want to retire. That's why the term's so ridiculous. What they really want is to be self-employed professionals, to have a portfolio career. So that's the new book that I've written with Mike Drack is called Victory Lap Retirement. So it just means post-corporate career.
Now, I think we might have a picture of the cover of that book that we can show people. Now, this book, I understand, is due to come out in September, is it?
In August, we hope to have copies. There's a new site just launched where you can pre-order the book at victorylapretirement.com,
Yeah.
which we'll link from the Financial Independence Hub as well. Mike Drack does blogs that we often repurpose on the Hub. So you can pre-order it, and yeah, I think it's a whole separate little movement that we hope to kick off here.
And part of the book was featured in the current issue of Money Sense.
Yeah,
magazine.
Money Sense is, I think the June-July issue is their annual retirement issue, so they did excerpt the chapter on what exactly Victory Lap is.
Yeah.
And we make this big distinction between FinDependent. So it's, from FinDependent. Basically, to get where you want, most people have 30 years of slaving and saving. And when you hit that, so you look in the cover where the man with the tie is slightly askew breaks through the finishing line. Let's say he's age 56. Sort of like, now what? I got 30 more years. We're all going to live a long time. So FinDependence is a prerequisite. But once you're there, then you want to have your Victory Lap, which could be another 25 or 30 years. But it's on your terms. You're now working because you want to, not because you have to, financially speaking. There's a subtle difference, but it's all in the head.
But those can be earning years now, too, right?
Yeah, exactly. But in fact, we talk about earning a paycheck. So
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah. So for example, I'm going to Newfoundland in another week. I'm doing a little speaking gig, and we're going to build a holiday around it.
Yeah.
But of course, some of the expenses and the hotels and the flight are defrayed, and there's a fee. And so that to me is like travel funded by other people. So I'm going to earn my paycheck that week. The classic retirement with defined benefit plans, and you sit around collecting Canada Pension Plan and OAS. People think that's what they want, but I've been working from home for 2 years now. It's a little bit isolated. It's a lot more fun to come down here downtown today for 600 Bay and interact with all you fine folks, because that's what life's all about: interacting with other people and having a mission and purpose. We talk repeatedly in the book about having a reason to wake up in the morning.
So I'm just going to tell a little story, of this building here. When I first came into the building, there was an old guy that ran the elevator, because we have an operator here, right? And then he retired, and the owners of the building, they run the store downstairs, and we had a party there for John, but he was dead within like 6 months, just because he didn't have a reason to get up in the morning anymore. And
it's a sad story. I mean, often you see people, retirees, they die of boredom, or another one is loneliness. And Rob Carrick at the Globe had a piece the other day on that very topic, that once you have no structure and routine and social network, which is called the office, the job, you better have a bunch of activities lined up. So Victory Lap Retirement is much about the social challenges and networking, the need to, there's 4 types of work, which there's a book called, The Ant and the Elephant, talking about Charles Handy, which I've talked about. And he talks about the 4 types of work when you have a portfolio career in your Victory Lap, or some people call it encore career. So there's paid work, we all know what that is. There's gift work, which is volunteering your time and money, whether it's the church or United Way or something like that. And there's housework. Hey, we all know housework. And then there's another, learning. So ongoing learning. So the Victory Lap is all about trying to find a balance between, people talk about work-life balance, a balance between boredom and stress. I mean, you have nothing at all, it's complete boredom. If you take on too much work, too much clients, then you're stressed out. So you have to find this balance. Fortunately, because you're in charge, you have a lot more control over your destiny than the average salaried employee does. So I think it's a trend that North American baby boomers, I think there's 80 million of them, they need the money because we got a bunch of problems here. We're going to live longer. Interest rates are really low. I was saying earlier to one of our guests we're going to have later that 20 years ago, if you wanted to make $50,000 a year in passive income, 2/3 bonds, you needed almost $1 million. Today, the figure is $2 million just to create that same $50,000. Add to that longevity, the fact that those defined benefit plans are pretty well gone, and then we're forced to take stock market risk, and they have all the so the solution really is to at least continue working at least part-time. Even if you work part-time in retirement and make $1,000 or $2,000 a month on top of your passive income, that will greatly extend the life of your retirement nest egg.
Yeah.
Charles Handy, I'm glad you mentioned that. He wrote another fascinating book called The Empty Raincoat, and he talks about the paradox, and he talks about the life cycle of a curve, the sigmoid curve he calls it, and it replicates the notion of a product releases, for instance. So the people that worked on the iPhone 6 were not the same people that worked on the iPhone 5. So once something is developed, it starts off in a state of dependency when you're in your, from the day you're born till you're 7, 8, until you're a teenager. And then you move up the curve till you're independent. And then you meet a bride or a spouse, and you become interdependent, and you start a new curve with your children. The trick to the whole system is, when do you start the new curve before the old curve becomes dependency again? So people who don't have this, if they think that the end of the day is when they retire, then they really have a fantastic opportunity to say, well, I'm going to retire at this point, but I better start a new curve before I reach the retirement. Your example of the elevator is very key. Men in their 65 to 70 is a very, very dangerous time. You see it often, people lose their job. The older they become, all of their life experience seems to be marginalized, because they become more invisible, and it becomes a frustration. So the knowledge, the opportunity, because of the new tools that have been developed, because of the new algorithms that can actually help you predict the results of a decision that you make today. So for instance, if you had the tools, you could say, I'm going to buy this stock. In 1919, for instance, if you had bought $40 of Coca-Cola stock, it would be worth today $10.5 million. Now, the point is when to buy it and when to sell it is always going to be the decisions that we all make, and it's happening right now with real estate. Who in this city, for instance, is that little 23-foot bungalow in Midtown Toronto really worth the $1 million that people are buying? Well, my argument is, yes, it's probably undervalued in a city like Toronto, but you have to have the longer view. You have to be able to say that just because you're at a point. For instance, when I was 60, there's a saying in my tradition that you don't wish somebody a happy birthday. You say to them, you should live to 120. And actually, you should live to 120 in 3 months, because nobody wants to die on their birthday. But the fact of the matter is, when I hit 60, I realized that, like a business, I was only at the end of my second quarter, and I was moving into my third quarter. So if you start to think about from 60 to 75, it's just another quarter. It's just another quarter of the cycle. And another book that was written was Lord Thompson of Fleet, who wrote about another really interesting book called After I Was 60. And he had lost his wife when he was 59. He handed the keys of the kingdom over to his son, Ken, and he went to Scotland. And he went into Edinburgh. He bought a beautiful Georgian home, and he started having lunches with Roy, Roy Thompson. And he started building, and then he started to notice some interest, and he saw an old established newspaper of 200 years called The Scotsman, and he said, I'm going to buy The Scotsman. So he did, and then he was the father of Thompson Yellow Pages and sales, so he brought a whole sense of sales into it, and eventually went off and he bought the Times. The book ends actually when he's 80 years old, 80 something, and he's on a helicopter and he's going out to look at his 6% interest in North Sea oil at 80 years old. So it was inspirational to me to read that book, to say.
And of course, Ray Kroc formed McDonald's after 60, and Colonel Sanders, the other famous example in junk food, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and there's plenty of other examples. That are similar.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing these examples up, because I bet there's a lot of people who are watching this right now that want to be financially independent, that want to hit that victory lap, but they're going, hey man, I missed out on the Freedom 55.
Well,
and I was going to ask you, John, because how well are Canadians doing, or people in general? Are they doing better than in the past in terms of being prepared for their retirement?
This is the ongoing debate. I mean, right now, politically, they're talking about expanding the Canada Pension Plan, about the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan. I think Canadians are in pretty good shape, but ironically, people who are low-income seniors actually do pretty well in Canada, because the combination of Canada Pension Plan, OAS, Old Age Security, and the Guaranteed Income Supplement means a senior couple who never saved a penny in their life or worked a day in their life, once they hit the magic age of 65, will probably qualify for $20,000, most of it tax-free a year for a couple, plus CPP if they qualified. The problem, the retirement, and then the rich people don't really need to worry if they have defined benefit pension plans. I was at my 40th college reunion the other day, and what I found, I asked the people, not everybody showed up, but the people who showed up, almost all of us were still working after 40 years, except a couple of people who worked in government and a couple of teachers. They're the only one. Of course, they have the defined benefit plans. But the rest of us, lawyers, doctors, a couple of journalists, entrepreneurs, self-employed business people, still working. And this doesn't surprise me, because there's a Canadian sociologist, Lindsay Green, wrote 2 interesting books. One is You Could Live a Long Time. It's about longevity, like be aware that you can break past 100. And more recently, she wrote one called Ready to Retire. And she talked about the fact that in 1900, a typical working span was like 20 years. Today, the average working span is 60 years. So no surprise at our college reunion that many people at only just 40 years, they're still planning to work another 10 or 20 years. Mm-hmm. So the book, Are You Ready to Retire, that Lindsay Green wrote, I just reviewed it on the Hub a couple of weeks ago. Basically, it talks about, couples. If a couple retire, who gets, the first one to retire in the classic sense gets the nice office, the home office, right? And the other person has to get a grunty spot in the basement.
That's my situation, John.
There you go. You can tell us all about it. But then, do you really want to spend? He says, "I married you for life, but not for lunch," right? So in one case, she talks about a couple where the woman was happy meeting him for breakfast and for dinner, but said, "I don't want to meet you for lunch. That's just too much." So you got these subtle deals that. You could spend a lot of time together as a retired couple, so you better have a network that's more than just each other. No, it doesn't matter how much you love each other.
So that's a whole other thing, the friends network, the support, the social network, right? But
well, I've also got another personal story to share, because I emigrated here when I was 30. And 7 years later, my parents followed me. My father was 73 years old, my mother was 69. And they arrived and they came and they said, after the second week that my father was here at dinner, he announced in all and sundry in his Irish accent from Belfast that he had a job. And I said, "What kind of job?" Thinking he'd got himself a job as a super or something. He says, "I got a job as a printer," and because he was a master printer, he was always a printer. And he said, and I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, I found a letterpress printer, one of the last standing letterpress printers in Canada, in 1984, and he started working with this company. They were called Mundy Brothers, believe it or not." And he was with them for 2 years until he was 76. And when he did eventually leave them, they lasted 6 months. He was the backbone, because he had this paradigm shift from letterpress to lithography to all of the changes.
Yeah.
It was a dying art, but he
Right.
was one of the last standing. So the knowledge, once back to the idea of the knowledge transfer, that we have an opportunity as boomers to be able to knowledge share. I tell my millennial friends and the people that I'm their apprentice. See, we're not employable at the rate that we may have been employable in the past, but we're certainly valuable to these people.
You know, that's
It's our
a good
value.
point, and I don't know if we're straying too far from the topic, but I think that, yeah, there's this whole concept of ageism, and I know a lot of people now that are getting older, but they still want to work, they still are applying for jobs, you know, and they do have that that skill set, that wisdom that they can share. I really think we need to get mentoring going between older people and young people. The older people have something to teach the younger people,
course.
and because we're moving into this high tech, a lot of times the older people don't know how to use the computer things, and the young people can teach them that. I think there can be a real,
Tremendous.
and this is like a, you know, forget about the generation gap. This is a way that the generations can really complement each other and learn from each other. You know, I think it'd be great if we could set up some sort of.
And I think that, I mean, it's a good point. I think one of the problems, though, if you have an expectation of, you know, being 63 or something, which is what I happen to be, I mean, a lot of the boomers work themselves up into high positions with high salary expectations.
Yeah.
And at some point they decide you're too old and too expensive and we can replace you with a younger, cheaper model. But the good thing about financial independence is if you don't have to set the bar too high financially speaking, you have to negotiate with the potential employers. Like, let's just do a 3-day a week. You know, after taxes, as self-employed, probably do as well as if I was fully employed 4 days or 5 days a week. We'll put in the mentoring program. If after a year you find my services too expensive, we'll adjust it to 2 days a week. So you need to be flexible that way. But the good thing is, with financial independence, you don't need a full-time 100%,
Exactly.
where the employer picks up the whole tab. You say, look, you're just one more stream of income. It's a nice one. I got all this passive income from government pensions here, investment income there. In fact, very shortly, I want to do segue. We want to start talking with real people. We're going to bring on a person who's got some financial issues she wants to talk about. But that's what we're talking about. We have a passive income. I think we're going to talk about RIFs and things like that, and RIFs and LIRAs and all that kind of thing. But the point is, somebody in that situation who's got passive income here, here, and here, but wants to work 2 days a week, you don't have to go to employers and say, I need $100,000 a year. You can say, you know, actually 30 or 40 would be okay. Can you afford that? Yes. Let's deal. So that's the shift. So that's part of the victory lap. You can still be an employee or a consultant, but you can build 2 days, 3 days, whatever it wants, or you just do by the project, by the hour. And that way we can do exactly what Norman and you were suggesting, become an expert system, imparting the knowledge of the boomer generation to our children, the millennials.
Yeah, and hopefully we can even get to the stage where we can do that, like, independently, where we're not even under getting paid by large companies, institutions at all, that we can do that independently. I mean, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that's
but,
what I call the portfolio career. So you might have
Yeah.
3 or 4 corporate clients, you've got 2 or 3 deals like that, and you got
Yeah.
speaking gigs here, and you're doing this and this, you got royalties, and you got an app you have to create it, and all sorts of things. And that's what Handy calls the portfolio career.
Well, it's the value. It's a redefinition of time and space in our relationship with it, you know, and the work. So the value. Another book that I shared with John a number of years ago. I had a heart problem when I was 40, and I was given by my homeopath a book called How to Earn Your Living in 4 Hours a Day Without Feeling Guilty About It, by Hugh. I think he had your name actually. Wasn't it Hugh Riley?
It was something pretty close. I
think
can't,
it was
actually,
pretty-
we referenced that in Victory Lap Retirement. We got the 4-hour day. It works quite in there.
by Hugh Riley, really.
I think so. I think it is a Hugh
Somebody
Riley.
do a Google
It
search
was
on
right.
that.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is, he wrote this book in 1954, and it was about creating value. And what he says quite clearly is that most people work between 9 and 5 or 9 and 6, whatever, and their whole challenge is to get in time
Yeah.
and then get out in time, and fill up the day by interruptions
Yeah.
to be seen and interrupt each other. Whereas if you say, no, I don't work that way,
Yeah.
I'm going to create 2 hours of value in the morning, whether it's a meeting and I'm going to go to a meeting and I'm going to record it.
Or a
and
salesman makes
or a
5 cold calls, that's the
but
2 hours
2
you're paid
hours,
for.
you know,
Right.
and then the results of the meeting, you spend 2 hours in the afternoon turning it into a proposal that you can go back to the people and say, well, I listened to what you said and you told me this situation, is that correct? And then you can deliver to them a proposition based on that. So we implemented it, and we've been implementing it for 30 years because we still think the 4 hour. And
Well, as I've talked about, the 4-hour day spread over the average corporate 8-hour day. I mean, they still want to see you, FaceTime 9 to 5. You say, okay, I'll play the 9 to 5 game.
Yeah.
You think in your head,
Yeah.
my real work. You get in the office at 9. What do people do? You get on Twitter, Facebook, email, and stuff. You read the paper, but you have to make a commitment to you and your employer, either explicitly or implicitly, that from 10 to 12 you actually start to really work.
Yeah.
Like make the sales calls. If you're a writer, you're going to make the calls, write the thing. But then you say, okay, great. And between noon and 2, I can go for a long lunch, do some networking, go exercise, whatever. Long as I've committed to myself and to the employer that between 2 and 4, I'm going to go back to the work that I'm really paid for. That's where the value comes. Knowing that between 4 and 5, I can go back to my Facebook and check out my Twitter and do emails and kind of wind down. So that's the secret 4-hour day built within an 8-hour corporate structure. And I've used that ever since Norman turned me on to it back in around 1985 or so. And it works. And it particularly works for creative people, because the average musician or somebody writing a symphony or a novelist, they really only have 4 or 5 hours of high-level creative work in them in a given day that they can do year in and year out. Beyond that, we need all this busy work. So that's why I don't think social media is all that destructive, because you just say, okay, that's the non-productive time.
Yeah, I just heard an interesting thing that the most creative people are often the ones that have a certain level of procrastination, because even if they're not actually working, they're in the back of their mind, even if they're doing other stuff, even if they're distracted, the back of their mind is putting the plan together, right? And then they might come in a little after deadline, but they've thought about it enough that this is actually proven that those are the most creative people.
Well,
that do some of that.
procrastination is good, but you see this logo here, this don't wait, do it. This don't wait, do it. Now, don't wait, do it is symbolic of a paradigm shift, because it says don't wait, but it also says do it. And it also says don't wait, do it now. And it also says don't wait, do it, own it. Now, my wife looks at this and she says, wait, don't do it. So half the book is don't wait, and the other book is wait, don't do it. Because to go back to your procrastination point, because a friend of mine, Michael Morris, was complaining to me a number of years ago about how he was overweight and he was worried about going back to his cardiologist because he had heart surgery. And I said to him, do you want to lose 2 pounds a week for the next 12 weeks? And he said, yes. And I took him into a Starbucks and showed him to count 24 bags of coffee. And I said, how are you going to lose that? I mean, really? And I said, but if you get up every day and you weigh yourself every day and you write it in a book and you say date and weight, date and weight, date and weight, and you visualize emptying out each one of these bags, and by the end of 12 weeks, he had actually lost 24 pounds. He wrote me an article called, which we may post on the blog, called Procrastination. And he said, how can I be a procrastinator? I'm a businessman. And I said to him, well, maybe you should procrastinate on some of the decisions that you make that are not so smart. Because doing things, don't wait and do it, might not be the right decision. Maybe the idea is not to do it, maybe to stop and think and really envisage from the future the decisions you're making in the present. How is that decision I'm making today going to impact the results in the future? So, and we have all of these tools now that are being developed. there's never been a better time for seniors. There's never been a better time for boomers, because we have our offices in our pocket now. We have we can do anything. We can be anywhere. We just have to own the fact that we are the invisible people. But we don't have. But we have another dimension. It's called experience, and we have knowledge, and we have and all of that transfer. It's very, very exciting time to be.
So maybe we should bring in.
Yeah.
Alter the gender proportions here.
Okay, we're
We have
yes.
3 males, and now
We're gonna
let's
get
have-
some female energy
Yes.
on this. Do you want to?
Yeah. Well, here.
Do you want to just bring her right on?
Yeah. Let's just bring her right on.
Now, do we have a microphone for her?
Or you can
Or
take.
she's gonna sit in the middle, or?
Maybe Norman can scoot.
Yeah, why don't-
Yeah,
Norman,
actually,
scoot
that's
over
a good
here
idea.
and-
Come on in.
Right, I'll keep it. Oh, that's your pen.
I got all the stuff over here.
Oh, it's nice and warm.
Here, you want a pillow?
Thanks. I don't want to fall asleep.
Yeah. You're still part of the conversation. So,
This
Lo-
is, yeah.
are we going to identify you?
This is Laura Tyson.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So you are perhaps an example of some of the types of people Norman was just talking about.
It's ordinary people.
Or ordinary people.
Well, I wouldn't think I'm ordinary.
Well, we wouldn't go there that far. But we were talking earlier about your own financial situation without actually using the ginormous numbers that are involved. You asked me.
Yeah, I have a lira.
A locked-in retirement
Yes.
account.
So in 2000, I was downsized from a major corporation, and I started my own business, several businesses.
Your Victory Lab.
My Victory Lab, yeah, and it's a lot of fun. So I took the money, and I had to take my pension amount, and I had to put it into a lira. Well, back in 2000, I didn't know a lira from a U.S. dollar.
From a blockchain.
From a blockchain, yes, of course. So I've figured out what is in the lira. I've got I have REITs, real estate. I have Royal Bank, I have Enbridge, and I have TransCanada, and I have a little bit in foreign investment.
So good, solid Canadian dividend-paying stocks. Paying dividends of probably 4%. That's pretty good.
So it has grown in 15 years 3 times.
It's tripled.
Yes. It's
So
tripled.
you have a good, and this is with one of the big bank full-service brokerages.
Yes.
And you had a good relationship with them, and they're basically discretionary money management. They're making the calls on your behalf.
Right.
They don't have to say, "Oh, Laura, by the way, we're selling Royal Bank and replace it with
no,
BMO."
I guess they call up and they say, this is what we were thinking of doing for our clients. Is this what you'd like to do? And it's either a yes or a no.
Okay, so you sign off on the decisions.
That's right.
So it doesn't sound like there's a big problem. The only thing is, as we said earlier, you can't get at the money to spend it, but you certainly have the ability to reinvest it and say, alter the mix if you change your objectives.
Okay, so then the locked-in retirement, the lira, is similar to an RRSP.
Yeah, it behaves quite similarly.
Okay.
Both are just vehicles, they're tax advantaged to hold securities, whether they're stocks, bonds, exchange traded funds, mutual funds, etc. And a lot of, eventually an RSP will turn into a RIF. And the only difference is and a lira is like an RSP. Once you hit late 70s, the government requires you to start withdrawing money from those plans, at which point you got to start paying taxes on it. So all those great tax refunds you got when you're doing your RSP, all of a sudden the other shoe falls, and the Revenue Canada says, we gave you a tax deferral, now it's time to pay the piper, we want our money. In fact, I do a column for Money Sense twice a month now, called Retired Money, on these exact issues. And this is a big one, but it sounds like you have no problem growing the wealth. So what question? I should also issue a disclaimer. I'm not a financial planner, advisor. I have no credentials in that way, nor do I wish to, because it's mostly a sales job. But I talk to a lot of people. I have a lot of people on the hub who do guest blogs. And if I don't know the answer, I can usually find someone who could get them for you. So I can take a crack and say, well, this is what I think they would say.
Well, I guess I should admit the fact that I don't pay that much attention to the money that's invested. Like, I don't look in the financial paper every day because I don't want to, oh my God, it's lost money, or the statement comes in
Well,
once a month.
The less you look at it, the better, probably. And it sounds like
I don't want to have gray hair like you.
Well, I've earned them.
Okay. Well,
But it sounds like you've got a gray-haired guy at the helm here, or girl,
Yeah.
and they're doing a pretty good job for you. So it seems like doesn't seem like a big problem.
well, then I'll enjoy my victory lap
I
and,
think
and
so.
keep working.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But it all depends on what you want to do and when you want to take the money out. And I mean, some people think you don't have to wait till 71
Okay.
to start withdrawing money from an RSP or RIF. You can actually set up a RIF at age 60 if you want to. But more, and that is going to happen in the victory lap. A lot of people have left corporate employment either voluntarily or involuntarily, and so you have these tax brackets. And most of us would probably have been in a very high tax bracket. That's why you're RSP. But once you're in the victory lap, you're almost become resigning as a taxpayer. All of a sudden you're in a lower tax bracket. It's actually a good time to start withdrawing money from a RIF or an RSP, because you don't want to withdraw at 71 when it's at the max and you're collecting Canada Pension Plan and OAS and all this other stuff. And then you're going to be right in the top tax bracket. You may have even claw back old age security. Mm-hmm. So in one's early 60s, if you're between employment income and government, OAS and CPP at 65, there's actually a sweet spot there between 60 and 68 where you could actually withdraw money from it, pay a little bit of tax, but a lot less than if you wait till the end. But that's an issue you got to talk to a financial planner with. We call it decumulation on the hub.
So then I guess it's best if you look at the spouse, if there's an age difference, it's better to to bleed out the money from your RRSP for the older person, bring it down, because the younger person is going to have a lot longer, or going to have a few more years to accumulate.
Yeah, and then you can get into spousal RSPs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically income splitting. And then don't forget this pension splitting as well, which is probably too complicated what we're talking about. But basically some couples, one of them has this defined benefit plan. Mm-hmm. Remember, going back to my college reunion, the only people that actually had really retired were defined benefit plan holders. And then the other person, the couple, has none. You can take that pension income, split it from a tax perspective. So instead of having a $60,000 income here and zero here, and somebody paying the taxes that $60,000 pays, each of them becomes $30,000,
okay,
which is in a relatively low tax bracket. There is a sweet spot tax-wise. I think it's at the $45,000. You always want to bring $45,000 income if you can, whether it's from pensions or earned income or passive investments, because remember the first $12,000 is tax-free. It's called the basic personal amount. When you file your taxes, you don't have to pay tax on the first 12, and then because we have an incremental system. It's there's a 15% rate, and then it goes up and up and up. And as we know, since the Liberal government came to power, if you're in the $200,000 plus bracket, you're getting really socked. Like our marginal top rate is like 53%, depending on the province.
Well, I don't have to worry. My business aren't at that level.
Well, yeah, and neither is mine, and so it's that's good. But there is a sweet spot. There's that one extreme is to be paying 53% on income over 200,000. Another is to pay no tax at 12,000. But you want to have enough money to live on. So I'd say like top up the bracket, try to bring in 45,000 a year, and then if you can live off your spouse's higher income, that's good too.
And what if you did some work and you worked in kind? Is that similar to volunteering?
Sounds like it to me, yeah.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's kind of a form of income splitting. But,
okay.
if you can volunteer work, I mean, a lot of people doing that. It doesn't have to be earned work. But the good thing about giving away work is you don't get taxed on the resulting. You don't have to invoice, and therefore it's not taxable.
And the benefit of doing something passionate that you enjoy is that it really is good for your self-esteem. You feel good, and you're going to stay healthier, I think.
Yeah, that's the gift work aspect of Victory Lab. So again, to go along with some paid work, some gift work, some study work, and some housework.
Or sometimes
I
it's
don't
just
do
about
housework.
Yeah,
Just a little bit.
You'd hire somebody for that.
No, are you kidding? You don't hire. Do you have a cleaning lady?
Yes.
Oh. We don't have one.
Hugh, you were saying?
Well, I was just going to say, but Laura, I've heard you ride your bike. Maybe you
Yes.
don't do housework, but you ride your bike, right?
Well, I do a little housework to make sure it's not too dirty, but yes, I ride my bike.
As a
How-
volunteer thing. right?
Housework is free exercise.
Well, if you call volunteering for the Ride to Conquer Cancer a volunteer, absolutely.
Well, plus it's kind of fun, right?
It's fun. It makes you feel good. It's good for your health. You win because you're helping other people.
Yeah.
The money's going for the research for cancer. And
Well, what
you
would
get
you
outside.
like people to do? You tell us about the ride you just had and the one that's coming up and what you would like to do. So, you're trying to raise money for cancer?
Well, I'm on a team called The Power of Bill. Bill is an 88-year-old gentleman. He's just a delight. He had a triple bypass about 8 years ago. This is his 8th year riding, and he's 88. And by the way, he's blind.
Wow.
And he rides tandem on the bike. And, you know, when I first met him a year and a half ago, I was so moved by his passion. And he said, and I have a short clip video that I'll show you after. He said, Laura, I've lost my sight, but I haven't lost my vision.
Good line.
Good. I mean, so we rode the 2-day race, and we finished. My butt was a little sore, but I'll tell you, I feel wonderful now. And I've signed up for next year. It's next June 10th and 11th. And my daughter's going to ride, and we're going to ride on the Power to Bill. We raised $75,000. There were 4,732 riders, and so far, it closes in August. We raised over $17 million for cancer research for Princess Margaret. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, that's the best thing.
That's what I call a victory lap. Yeah.
And last October, a dear friend of mine for 43 years, he lost his battle to pancreatic cancer. And we had lunch together, and I said to he and his wife, I said, Rick, I'm going to ride for you. And he said, Laura, I'll be there with you. And he didn't make it, but I did. And when I crossed the finish line, I was late. I came in around 4:30. As a matter of fact, I was late because this woman flagged me down, and she said, could you take my picture? So I pulled over, and she said, I'm Polish, and I'm going to Poland next week. My mother is dying of cancer. And she said, can you take my picture in front of the falls? So I took a picture on her iPad, and I finished the race, and the announcer said, oh, and here comes Laura, and everybody clapped, and I cried. And it was so emotional to think that I finished it, and that I did it for Rick, and I did it for Steve and Dee Dee and Eleanor and Sue and Joel and all those people that are battling with cancer. Because, you know, I don't know if in our lifetime we'll be able to find a cure, but I'm sure for our kids we'll find a cure for cancer. And the work that they're doing at Princess Margaret on 101 College Street on the 14th floor, I had a tour with Dr. Neil Fleshner, the oncology surgeon. They have a biobank up there. They have 800,000 samples that are frozen in these large tanks, and they take them out and they do all sorts of research. They've got tissue and urine and blood, and the scientific knowledge today on what they can do to find a cure is amazing. So I'm sure they're going to find a cure.
This ties right into our longevity theme, which is the whole point about the victory lap, that you may stop your corporate employment when you're 60 or so, but if you're going to live to 100, that's 40 years, a long time to go, A, without a paycheck, and B, sitting in a Muskoka chair. So
Well, that's why I volunteer. I went back to Ryerson 4 years ago, and I took their Caring Clown program through the Chang School.
I've seen the photographs.
You've seen the photographs with
The big
my
red nose.
Big red nose. And I also play the ukulele, and I use that. My name is Lorna Doone, singing a tune. And I go into the senior citizens' homes, and I make people smile. And there's a lot of people that are just sitting around watching the paint.
Interesting about the
Peel.
musical instrument. I have a friend who did retire relatively early in her 50s with a defined benefit pension plan, and she took up the clarinet. She spends hours a day playing this music, and you're starting to see this a lot. Boomers, and my brother just formed a rock group at age 60 by putting an ad out on Kijiji, and that was on his bucket list. and they had their first they're called Good Company out of Waterloo. They had their first gig a couple weeks ago as a fundraiser for a church. Same thing. All these people, they all have their day jobs, but they all have this musical dream. So I think we're going to see a lot of musical.
Well, plus we know what
boomers.
Norman's doing. Norman's
Norman's been doing this for years.
archiving all the stuff he's been working on
Specs.
Yeah.
for spec. You know, what do you call that, Norman? You should come over here so we can get your mic. But what do you call that? You know, your guys in Israel with the unpublished.
Well,
what's that thing?
the notion is that there's a great volume of undiscovered and unpublished. There's
Yeah.
a lot more people in the pyramid that, you know, the pyramid is the very top of the talent tree, the people that actually make it. And in many ways, the digital recurrence that the old is new, all of the old bands and everything are now being recycled. I mean, the Beatles catalogue with Apple and so on. But what I had the good fortune to do was I had a band in the 70s and a business much in a location in Glasgow like this, and we put a band together with my friends. We went to a cottage for a couple of days and we recorded 14 songs, and we actually got interviewed in Radio Clyde in Scotland, and we went into the studio and we remastered the album. I shopped it around in the conventional sense back then, because you had to, you know, the record company, the A&R, the whole system was different than it is today, because now we have the ability to be able to self-publish, self-produce, and be able to do it. But I took these tapes, was unable to get a deal, even though I met with Alan Parsons, who said if I wasn't working on my project, I would produce this. And then we came back, and in the vagaries of the economy, we decided to emigrate, my wife and I brought a box of reel-to-reel tapes called Specs tapes. My daughter-in-law later saw when we were moving house, she said sex tapes, and she freaked out. No, I said Specs tape, Specs, Space Explorers, But I took these tapes, and by 1995, 20 years afterwards, I was working on some other production, and I digitized them in a company called Metalworks, a studio. And then I listened to the tapes, and it was really cool. And then the wonder of the internet happened, because my brother-in-law played in the band. I knew where he was in London. My friend Harvey is the greatest guitarist. Was in California, I knew where he is. But the key guy was a guy called Larry Collins. And when we came to Canada, he went off in a whole journey and disappeared. Until January last year, I got a Facebook reach out saying, do you know Larry Collins? And I said, absolutely, where is he? And it turned out that Larry had continued his music career, had worked in South Studio in New York, worked with Gary Glitter and Gladys Knight and the Pips and all kinds of people. And he had actually moved to Israel, where he manages and runs a successful royalty-free music portal called Stockage Music, which allows people to be able to own their original content. So all of these people have written diaries, written stories, and had to go through the horror of trying to pitch it to a publisher or a producer, can now empower themselves and publish their own and own their own work. So we remastered the tapes in Israel. I went out to Israel, we remastered the actual original tapes, and we had the privilege of doing our first Skype show on October the 22nd last year in this studio, and we launched Specs 8 tracks. It's up at stockagemusic.com, and it's tremendously hopeful. The reality is it going to be a big, off the charts? It doesn't matter. What matters is to do good work. If you can do work, and I've been fortunate all through my life to be able to not only be paid for good work, but actually be able to sign good work. This picture in the background with Apple is testament to that. And you never know. Maybe someday, it's like Pablo Picasso. I say the Pablo Picasso in 1919 was living in France, and as a starving artist, and he was going through all of his work until 10, 20 years later, a journalist chose his Guernica painting to illustrate the Spanish-American, the war at that time, as symbolic, and they published it in Figaro, the newspaper Figaro, and they say, and all of a sudden everybody was saying, who's the artist? Who's Pablo Picasso? And I think we're all waiting for well, that's really good, but what else have you done? And he said, well, let me show you. And he had these, his blue period and his cubist period and all of these. So he was able to bring out all of this work, because one day maybe somebody will discover this stuff.
A good example of people who are switching careers, baby boomers. I have a friend who was in the investment industry for about 40 years, and he decided his sister-in-law was a life coach, and he basically decided he wanted to be an actor. Well, he left, took a package, and now he is an actor. And in fact, there was a production called The Other Side of the Cubicle. There was about 6 or 7 people from Bay Street, all producing this thing at Buddies of Bagtimes Theater, and it was sort of life imitates art. But basically, they all wanted to leave financial services, become actors, and like yourself and my brother trying to become musicians, and Laura playing a musical instrument and everything else. I think this is what the boomers are going to reinvent. They've reinvented every stage of the life they've gone through. Now we're going to reinvent retirement, and by starting with retiring the word retirement, because we're not ready to stop.
I don't like that word. When someone says, "Are you retired?" I'm not retired. I'm not retired. I am working.
You're independent.
Who else wants to do anything with the word tired in it?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Exactly. So that's why we've created terms like Findependence and Victory Lap, because we don't need the word retirement. Although we do probably have to retire this particular episode, because I think we've almost hit the time limit.
Yeah, we're pretty much there. I was just going to say, maybe we're all getting up there somewhat in age, but really, we're all a bunch of teenagers, and we don't even look that old, right?
Age is just a number.
What was it I said just to do useful? What was we had a conversation about useful. Can't remember. It was a good idea at the time.
He's having a senior moment. He's having a senior moment.
Well, I'm working on a book called "If You Can Remember the '60s, You Weren't There," and I was there, and I remember it, and it was really good.
Just can't remember yesterday, but he's got vivid memories of 30, 40 years ago. So is that it? We're done.
Well, let's just let's give everybody the plug here. Of course, John, because you got the new book coming out, like we said, which is called Victory Lap.
Retirement.
And we can maybe show the cover, so people know what to look for when they go to the bookstore. Also, they can pick up the Money Sense, the current issue, and get a bit of a preview, right?
Yeah, it's an excerpt from one of the chapters in the book on Victory Lap itself, the concept.
And of course, they should go to FindependenceHub.com, the portal for financial independence and all this stuff.
Yeah, right? And they can go and pre-order the book at victorylapretirement.com.
Yeah,
and we should say that. Will you have a signing?
Well, I don't know. It's a little too early to say. But I mean, eventually the book will be distributed in normal chapters and other independent bookstores. So we have a normal publishing sort of deal where it will be available everywhere. But for those who don't want to go to those sites, they can just go online.
I'm going to have to show you this Vine we made, because it was all about books.
Yeah.
But
also, the other unique thing about the book is that it's each chapter is illustrated with a cartoon by
Steve Neese.
Steve Neese, and our intention is to actually produce an electronic and a printed calendar. Because so that people can actually use the calendar as a workbook to be able to plan their financial independence.
Well, luckily we have 12 cartoons, and since there's 12 months in the year, we're all set.
should we just, should we just give people some hope? Even if people are getting a little bit older, but they don't feel they're ready for all this, is it?
Well, there's plenty of hope.
It's tremendous hope.
I mean, retirement is a bit of an anticlimax. If you thought you wanted to retire because you were just stressed out from 40 years of being pushed around, and then all of a sudden you go from not enough time for me to way too much time.
Yeah.
I mean, the average job takes 2,000 hours of your life. So if you multiply, say, I'm going to live 40 years in retirement, 40 times 2,000 hours, that's 80,000 hours. That's a lot of time to fill.
Yeah.
Whether you play the clarinet or
play golf
or golf or whatever, What other activity can spend? I mean, sleep is 8 hours a day. Work was 8 hours a day. You can't eat 8 hours a day, and most other activities you're lucky if you spend a few hours. So,
Yeah.
I think study, lifelong learning are big things. New hobbies, new changing professions, like
Yeah.
the financial people that turn into actors. My brother from a chemist to a musician. We have all the examples. We have plenty of time to reinvent ourselves for the final third of the boomers' lives.
And yeah, and even with this new evolving technological environment, you know, we can keep those. You can be earning, you can be still contributing and earning income even after the so-called retirement.
Yeah, earning a
date,
paycheck.
right?
Remember
Yeah.
the paycheck.
That's all in the book, right, John?
Well, and remember the subtitle: "Work while you play, play while you work." I mean, you could argue whether are we right now playing or working. I'm
Well-
having fun, so I would call this play.
Exactly.
Some people might say it's work. So I think, I mean, the old deal when you used to close big business deals on the golf course, were you working or were you playing?
Yeah.
Well, it was a bit of both. If you could structure your life so that you don't even know which it is, play or work, then I'd say you're a successful person.
Yeah.
So we're all a faculty on the Institute of Higher Earning and Learning, right?
Absolutely.
Higher earning and learning. That's what you have to do. You have to learn every day. The older you become, the more you realize how little you know. The younger you are, the more you realize how much you know. And it's an interesting paradox.
So maybe we'll give Laura the last words.
Well, it was interesting. I was recently in Fredericton at a music care conference put on by a charitable organization called Room 217, and they talked about music. And there was a doctor from U of T, Dr. David Alter, saying how important musicking and singing is for the brain. Again, you're learning a new language. You're being social. You're using your lungs and your chest. It's good for you physiologically. I mean, anything you do in life, keep doing it. Do as much as you can and have as much fun. Because, you know, we're not here forever. We're here for a good time and a longer time now. And with John's help, we'll be able to make it financially.
Well, my philosophy is do everything all at once, Laura. So I think that fits in with
Okay.
what you're doing, right? And we
Yes.
should tell people about the digitalcitizen.com website, right, Norman?
Well, currently the best site to look at is creativemarketingnetwork.ca, which
Okay.
really is the placeholder for the Digital Citizen Show. And this is just an ongoing conversation with, as the paradigm shifts from citizen to digital citizen, from analog to digital, from Gutenberg to 3D printing, from Unix to blockchain, from talking movies to augmented reality. So all of these shifts and changes are around, and we are interested in talking to people who are at the top of the tree and who are just at the beginning of the roots of it. We're in the center of the fintech universe here with financial and technology. This is Toronto, Dundas and Bay location, and we are walking distance from Mars, the biggest incubation center in Canada. We're a digital media zone across the street. Ryerson is across the street. There is so much talent within reach of every one of us that it behooves us to reach out and share the knowledge, share the wealth, share the joy, and be grateful and happy and that we're alive. And we have everything money can't buy as long as we are alive. And if we happen to live in Canada, oh, what a bonus. We're very lucky. We're the lucky ones.
All right, that's a great way to end the show, Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Hugh.
Jonathan, great
you,
to do
Hugh.
this. It was lots of fun. So we'll say,
Work while you play, play while you work.
yeah. So we'll say bye to everybody, and we'll see you next time here on the Digital Citizen Show.
Perfect.
Great.